Laurie Marr, welcome to Business Insider, and thanks for your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, we hope you feel like that at the end. That's the important thing.
There'll be no trouble with that.
Okay. A couple of things. It would be great to get some history, and I'd love to start there. We talked about the Marr brand. Why are you here? And
I suppose two reasons. One, I'm fiercely independent, and I previously in another life was a public servant who learnt early on that he needs to be apolitical in terms of party politics, and so that doesn't that's part of the reason. The other thing is I have a big background in social issues, and in my real life I run a Coast Shelter, which provides emergency accommodation for the homeless, and I went to my board of directors one year to proudly announce we'd increased our capacity to house homeless people by 20%, but unfortunately the number of people we had to refuse accommodation to had actually increased by more than 20%. Yeah. So my board of directors said we better get involved in social planning and those sorts of forums. Soon after that, people in the community said put up or shut up, and so I'm on local government, and in their wisdom or lack of it, I'm now the mayor.
Let's call it wisdom, because I'd love to pursue the Coast Shelter for a second, because it is a very important part of important part of your life, and we are talking to successful businesses on the coast who are looking for ways to support social enterprise on the coast. Is there something that you would love these key players on the coast to be doing with Coast Shelter, if you had 30 seconds to talk about how they could be involved? Or
yes, the biggest request I'd have of local business is that they grow, and if they grow they create employment. If they create employment, that really affects the social health of our community, and we raise our average income from $40,000 a year to something more significant. And that would be the biggest thing. In terms of their generous support of Coast Shelter and of other charities, the Central Coast would stand without a peer, I think, in terms of their generosity. They really are extremely generous in terms of assisting people who are trying to do the right thing in their community.
Excellent. Okay, that was that pitch. Now, as mayor, the relationship between the council, Gosford Council, and business, if you could identify a couple of areas where that relationship could be strengthened on both sides, because neither are running a perfect show at the moment, but
well, nothing ever, of course, is perfect, but we are to a great extent hamstrung by regulation and red tape. There have been a number of attempts to reduce red tape, but even in terms of just development applications for business, ours is a really tiresome, energy sapping and fun sapping way we go about it, and we need to be better at that. And in terms of attracting business, we've got to actually work harder at attracting business to the Central Coast, mainly for employment and that. So we have to work very closely with business, and I think that council has improved quite dramatically over the last two councils in that. I think prior to that we had a reputation for being almost anti-development, and therefore anti-business, and if you take the next step in that, it's anti-employment. So we really are overcoming that, and the Gosford Challenge is probably a prime example of that. We will still have the ants in our community, those who want to bite you around the ankles, to say we can't have this, we can't have that. But in terms of where we're going and the development, which we haven't seen much of yet, most of it's foundation stuff under the ground, but we're heading in the right direction, and I think that's improving. And when I talk to business, and I can get them to step out of their historical perception of Gosford City Council, they all seem to be pretty positive.
Excellent. With regard to development applications, we hear red tape. Chris Holstein was saying, one of his opportunities to reduce red tape. It's kind of that he's not in the room now, so I can say it's a throwaway political offer to businesses that suggests that they're actually going to do something positive, when in actual fact, I think business has to show where they can be self-managing or where they can see red tape being cut. Business Insider, actually, this is a bit of a rant now, is looking at ways where we can put an industry group together, maybe to look at development applications, for instance, from a business perspective, and say, why are we filling these forms out, and coming back with perhaps solutions rather than just waiting for government to fix the problem. Would that get a hearing, do you think?
Oh, I think so. For not only is it the forms, if you like, to fill in, it's the cost. And the costs which we have for development can actually be the costs that drive people away. And historically, Gosford has had high costs. And I've got to say that because of the shortage of infrastructure, when I first became mayor, not this time but previously, I actually persuaded the Department of Planning to actually put our Section 94 costs and so forth up because we needed the infrastructure. Very unwise because it drove business away, and they said, look, we can do it cheaper elsewhere. And that is still the case. We need to be doing something about it to reduce development costs, but we also need to be doing a lot about reducing the amount of red tape and forms to be filled in. It just drives people mad. It really doesn't matter to business in lots of ways, whether they develop here or at Penrith, except we've got the most perfect location in the world. But besides that, it's a toss of the coin. And so if we facilitate development here, if we are encouraging, if we're welcoming, and if we can actually assist them to actually get their developments through, we've got a chance. But it's a highly competitive field.
It's an excellent point. We own some geography here, and it can be Penrith, or it can be Campbelltown, or it could be Bowral. It can be anywhere. They're mobile.
That's right. Well, when you consider it, many of the business leaders actually live on the North Shore. Where would you rather drive? Up the F3 with no intersecting traffic, or drive all the way out to Macarthur? I mean, we just have to take advantage of our location and of the facilities that are available. Our competitive advantage ought to be there. We've got to build on it.
Okay. Maybe leading in from that, have the next 12 months, have you set any personal goals as to how you'd like to see council change or evolve over the next 12 months?
Well, we've had a trouble, actually, I believe, in turning around the culture of Gosford City Council. And if I could ever sort of persuade council, that's the staff and at council level, that we ought to, stealing the American motto, become a can-do council. Whenever somebody comes to us, we look to see whether we can accommodate them and how we can assist them, not look to see how many problems they've got in front of them. And we have a weekend with councillors in the next few weeks. The thing I'll be talking to them all the way through to try and encourage them is let's try and develop a can-do council.
Excellent. Okay, we might come back in 12 months and see how that's progressed.
I certainly hope when you do that we can actually have some runs on the board.
Excellent. We've talked about your community work, your business work and your council work. It all kind of leads to this question about work-life balance, Laurie. Do you believe there is something called work-life balance? Or?
Oh, I think there is. I suppose in one sense I've been always accused of being a workaholic. But there is a balance. I mean, my wife did most of the raising of our family of 6. But we sort of get through things. We've ended up a very happy family, so that's the big balance.
That's the measure.
Yeah, that is the absolute measure. But up until recently, I was president of Country Rugby, and I was on the board of directors of New South Wales Rugby and so forth, and that took up a fair amount of energy rather than time. But in terms of balancing out being mayor and being the CEO of Case Shelter, that's a little bit difficult at times, but just with a bit of organisation we can sort of manage that. And I'm so old now, I haven't got much else to do.
Well, and you've got 6 children, kiddies, to keep you grounded. I wish. Are they short of opinions on what Dad's doing?
Oh, absolutely not. But they're no longer kiddies.
No, obviously not.
And they all hold very responsible jobs. A lot of them in welfare and law enforcement. No, they don't hesitate to tell me.
Well done, well done. We now get on to the rant stage. You know, if 60 seconds, this is your soapbox. What gets up your nose, Mr. Maher?
The first thing I'd say in terms of a rant is that there are too many tiers of government in Australia. And there seems to be no real reason, in my thinking, why we have state government. You've got a federal government, which is these days is heading more towards regional funding, and we could do away with the states. It's just too costly and it's too inhibiting in terms of getting things through. The other thing I would rant about is very much related to that, is the level of cost shifting. For all sorts of reasons, and local government is not completely innocent in this, state government and federal government to some extent, but mainly state government, over the years has transferred the cost for providing services to local government, and yet has had this unusual thing called rate pegging to say, well, we'll determine the amount of money you can raise in relation to it. And some of even the federal grant money has been reduced over recent years, so that if the people are to basically, if you like, catch and cook their own, they need to have the resources to do that. And if they're going to provide services, they ought to know exactly what is their core business and do that. And all of those other things that are not core business, most of which have been shifted in terms of the cost of them from state government, need either to be withdrawn or the government needs to fund them properly at the local government level.
On both of those levels, the tiers of government and also that those cost transfers, can business do anything to help there?
Well, I don't know. I suppose we vote in federal governments and so forth, and they might be able to do it. But local government is not even recognised in the national constitution. I mean, it just happens to be there. It's a bit like Topsy, it just growed. And then it's been the catch-all for anything that nobody wanted. But really, it's a question of educating the community, I guess, in terms of saying this is where we need to be going. But I think if you actually go to the people, and that would include businesses, and say, do you really need 3 levels of government? I would take a guess and say that the majority would say very clearly, no, we are overgoverned in our country.
Maybe that's how, maybe we take it out there and put it on a platform somewhere and see what sort of energy we can generate around it. Final question, when you're looking for information about the Central Coast, how do you get it at the moment, and do you see any opportunities to improve that flow of information and news and what people are doing?
I will always go to the Central Coast Research Foundation.
Right.
We don't sufficiently fund that. I'm a great believer in terms of getting the information before you make the decision. We need to enhance the Central Coast Research Foundation to make it bigger and stronger, so that they can actually provide the data and information on which we make decisions. I don't think I ever have problems making decisions, but I like the facts on which to base those decisions, and sometimes that's a bit difficult to get. So I suppose the best we can do at the moment is use what we've got and then have a listening ear, that when people are giving you information, you take it on board, put it in a computer in the back of your head, and then use that in terms of making decisions.
Well, Business Insider, hopefully, Laurie, will move down that path where we are about delivering information quickly. It's got to be full and right, but it is about getting it out there so people are more aware of what's going on in the Central Coast market.
And I would absolutely welcome that. I mean, too often opinions are given as facts, and if you're not careful, you can fall for the 3-card trick. That if we can get accurate, factual information it then gives you a chance to make correct decisions, and decisions that stand the test of time as well, because that's so important. But we just have so many experts in our community who will give you absolute information which when examined turns out to be just pure opinion.
Laurie, there is another level, there is the local business chambers in the region. How can they be more involved, or do you expect them to be more involved? Do they have a role as you see them?
Yeah, I'm fairly critical of local business chambers. I'm open to meet with them on a monthly basis if they want to. The thing that I would want from them is that they come with the big picture, not pushing their own particular barrows. And that happens in chambers. Some of our chambers are very good, and some of them take up the option of meeting with me to put forward the basic concerns and the aspirations of their local areas, and that really works very well. But then of course, people are so busy, they don't always want to be on the board of directors of the chamber, and so you just get people there pushing their own barrow. But it's there, and they really do need to be informing council, and council needs to respond to it. I mean, it's not that we're a developers council, it's not that we're a business council, but we know that unless we get business investment and development, we can't create jobs. Unless we create jobs, we haven't got a healthy community, and so it's just so important. And so much of our employment on the Central Coast is small business and retail. That's where it's at, that and tourism, from the greater part of our employment. So we need to be there. And yes, it is disappointing when you see some owners of businesses who, for whatever reason, have let their buildings deteriorate, and we are then limited by what we can do in terms of saying, let's get a D9 and clear the area at least, and see if something worthwhile can be built there.
I find it extraordinary that after 1 or 2 years in local government, you still have this energy, and I thank you for having that. I think we need more to be pushing through like you do every day. And I salute our councillors also, who do it for nothing but sheer love. So, Laurie, thanks for your time.